What if one of the most popular messages preached in modern Christianity is not the gospel Jesus preached at all? What if millions of believers have been taught a version of faith that sounds spiritual, sounds powerful, sounds biblical, but quietly replaces surrender with control? A gospel where human words become weapons of manifestation, where declarations supposedly activate heaven, where faith becomes the ability to force outcomes through certainty, speech, and sacrifice.
A gospel summarized in one phrase: name it and claim it.
For decades, this message has spread across pulpits, television networks, conferences, books, live streams, and churches around the world. If you can believe it, you can receive it. Your words create your reality. Declare your breakthrough. Speak your healing. Speak your blessing. Don't confess negativity. And millions embraced it, not because they hated God, but because they were hurting, desperate, afraid, trying to survive, trying to escape suffering, trying to make sense of pain, trying to believe that if they just had enough faith, maybe life would finally change. And that is what makes this counterfeit gospel so dangerous. It does not spread primarily through rebellion against God.
It spreads through human desire, exactly as Scripture warned it would.
The Apostle Paul wrote these chilling words in 2 Timothy, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables." Notice something carefully. Paul does not say false teachers alone create deception. He says people gather teachers for themselves. Why? Because they crave messages that agree with their desires. That is the hidden engine underneath counterfeit gospels. Human appetite. People do not simply consume falsehood accidentally. Often they hunger for it emotionally. And name it and claim it feeds one of the deepest desires in fallen humanity: control, the desire to master uncertainty, to avoid suffering, to force outcomes, to escape weakness, to guarantee blessing. This is why the message spreads so rapidly, because it offers people something incredibly seductive: a formula, a system,
A method for controlling reality spiritually.
and once people believe outcomes can be manipulated through declarations, offerings, and certainty, Christianity quietly transforms into something else entirely. Not surrender to a king, but mastery of spiritual laws. This is why the movement became so emotionally addictive, because the message feels empowering. It tells suffering people, you are one declaration away, one seed away, one level of faith away. But hidden underneath that empowerment is another message entirely. If your breakthrough does not happen, the problem must be you. Your faith was weak, your confession was wrong, your doubt blocked the miracle. And this is where the counterfeit gospel reveals its cruelty. Because eventually the same people promised control become crushed beneath shame. Imagine a mother praying for her dying child while wondering whether her fear canceled the miracle. Imagine a cancer patient secretly blaming themselves for not believing strongly enough. Imagine grieving believers terrified to admit sadness because church culture taught them honesty sounds like unbelief.
This is not freedom. It is spiritual bondage disguised as faith.
And yet millions continue embracing these teachings. Why? Because the human heart naturally gravitates toward messages that promise power without surrender. This is exactly what Paul meant by itching ears. People do not always want truth. They often want relief, control, certainty, and counterfeit teachers rise wherever human desires create demand for them. That is why these movements thrive, especially in cultures obsessed with success, self-empowerment, manifestation, and personal advancement. Because name it and claim it fits perfectly inside modern culture. It merges Christianity with self-actualization. God becomes the mechanism through which people achieve health, wealth, victory, success, status, breakthrough, and control over circumstances.
But here is the devastating question. What did Jesus actually teach?
Because one of the greatest tragedies of this movement is how often Jesus himself becomes strangely absent from the message. His language gets used, his name gets quoted, but his actual teachings frequently stand in direct contradiction to the system being built around him. Jesus never taught people to use faith to control God. He taught people to surrender to him. Again and again, Christ dismantled humanity's obsession with earthly security, visible success, and self-preservation. He did not say, declare your best life. He said, take up your cross. He did not say, manifest your destiny. He said, deny yourself. He did not say, use faith to avoid suffering. He said, in this world you will have tribulation. This is where the collision becomes unavoidable. Because the name it and claim it gospel often presents faith as a tool for escaping the very realities Jesus promised believers would face. And perhaps nowhere is this clearer than in Gethsemane. The night before the crucifixion, Jesus stood beneath unbearable suffering. If ever there were a moment for positive confession theology to appear, this was it. But Jesus did not declare the cross away. He did not manifest a different outcome. He prayed, not my will, but yours be done. That sentence alone destroys an entire counterfeit system. Because biblical faith was never about controlling outcomes. It was about trusting God through outcomes, even painful ones. And yet much of modern Christianity now treats surrender almost like failure. Waiting becomes weakness. Suffering becomes suspicion. Grief becomes negativity. The cross becomes secondary to breakthrough. But Jesus never promised his followers control. He promised himself. That changes everything.
Because Christianity was never meant to revolve around mastering spiritual principles to secure earthly outcomes.
It was meant to reconcile people to God. And the moment faith becomes primarily about obtaining things, the center of the gospel quietly shifts. Christ stops being the treasure. Blessings become the treasure. That is why many believers trapped in this system eventually become spiritually exhausted. They spend years trying to maintain enough positivity, enough certainty, enough declarations, enough faith language to keep God moving in their lives. They become terrified of doubt, terrified of honesty, terrified of weakness, because they have been taught that outcomes depend on maintaining spiritual performance. This creates enormous anxiety, especially when suffering inevitably arrives. And it always does, because no declaration stops human mortality. No confession removes every tragedy. No formula exempts believers from living in a fallen world. Eventually, reality crashes into the fantasy of control. And many people begin losing faith altogether, not because Jesus failed them, but because a counterfeit gospel made promises Jesus never made. This is why restorative deconstruction matters. Because many wounded believers do not need freedom from Christ. They need freedom from systems that distorted him. The answer is not cynicism, not mocking faith, not rejecting miracles altogether. God still heals. God still provides. God still moves powerfully. But miracles were never meant to become mechanisms of control. They were acts of mercy from a sovereign king, not rewards for mastering spiritual technique. The true gospel restores something the counterfeit gospel steals: trust, not trust in outcomes. Trust in God himself. The counterfeit system says, if your faith is strong enough, you can control reality. Jesus says, follow me. One centers human power, the other centers surrender. One turns God into a servant of human desires, the other restores him as Lord. And perhaps that is why Jesus spoke so often about children entering the kingdom. Because children trust. They do not manage sovereignty. They do not negotiate control. They trust their Father. The name it and claim it gospel teaches believers to obsess over outcomes.
Jesus teaches believers to seek first the kingdom of God.
Those are not the same message. And maybe some people watching this know exactly what this feels like. Maybe you blamed yourself for prayers that went unanswered. Maybe you exhausted yourself trying to maintain perfect faith. Maybe you became terrified of your own doubts. Maybe you secretly wondered why Christianity felt more like pressure than peace. If that is you, hear this clearly. Jesus is not the author of that burden. He never asked you to become sovereign. He asked you to follow him. The gospel was never an invitation to control God. It was an invitation to trust him, even through suffering, even through uncertainty, even through unanswered questions.
Because the center of Christianity was never human power. It was always Christ himself.
And every stronghold that exalts itself against the knowledge of God must come down, including this counterfeit gospel. If this episode exposed something you experienced, wrestled through, or survived, share it with someone who needs it. Because countless believers are still trapped inside systems that promise control but delivered shame. And if you are ready to dismantle counterfeit Christianity and rediscover the true gospel Jesus actually preached, subscribe to the Kingdom Saga, because the real gospel does not teach people how to control God. It teaches people how to know him.